Hello everyone! Welcome to Melissa's Art and Life. I am Melissa and we're going to do some art today. And we're going to talk a little bit about life because everybody's stuck in their houses and nobody likes it. So today I have a very easy, simple, I'm going to go with simple, straightforward charcoal tutorial to show you guys today to help you through your little quarantine experience, or if you're watching this later and you're no longer in quarantine, God bless you, and I hope you still get a lot out of this tutorial. So I'm going to start with showing you the things that I used. But I worked from a reference and I recommend you do too. You don't have to. Basically, I work a little bit more realistically versus stylized. Both are great. I just happen to lean a little bit more realistic. I'm not a hyper realist. I don't have the time and or patience to do that. The people that do, it's beautiful stuff. This is in the realm of realism, just not, you know, all the bells and whistles of hyper realism. So let's get started. The stuff I used. First thing I used was multimedia paper. I'll put links for stuff down below, I guess, for everything that I used. Multimedia paper. Next thing I used was a pencil because I did kind of like an underdrawing just to make sure my proportions were on point. And if you're doing realistic drawing, you really need your proportions to be on point. If you don't know very much about proportions and you remember seeing people in movies and stuff do this number where they're trying to measure, that's exactly what they're doing, is they're measuring the proportions. Okay, if the head is this big and then the arm is this big, so I know it's only that much bigger than the arm. I think they're measuring the distances between lines and comparing them to other shapes on their piece. So try that. You could do it with a ruler, you could do it with a pencil, you could do it with whatever you like, but try to get your proportions on point there. So work on your proportions, make sure they're all laid out nicely, your shapes are laid out nicely, and once you get past that, we'll start to the actual charcoal portion. So with the charcoal, I used some compressed charcoal, I used a charcoal pencil. This one is a extra soft 6B pencil. I used a blender stub. I used a piece of tissue paper also. You don't have to use tissue, but I find it very helpful. It's a cleaner blend than you can get from like your fingers and a larger blend than you can get from the stump. So a big, you know, regular rubber eraser. And I also used a, let's see if I can find it, a fine eraser. This is, I think I got this one from the dollar store. Tombow Mono Zero Elastomer Eraser. Yeah, tiny little eraser for fine lines. I also used this gel pen right here that I got out of the Jazz's Jazzy Art box. I also used, incidentally, I used this canvas simply to clean my erasers because charcoal can dirty up your eraser real fast, and it's nice to be able to clean your erasers. So those are the things I used. Something I didn't use that I recommend using, especially if you're like me and left-handed, is a separate sheet of paper to rest your hand on so you don't just smudge your drawing as you're drawing because it's not a whole lot of fun. You'll see the mess I got myself into. And let's just get started. One, you want to make sure, again, your proportions are set. So before you move on to the charcoal, make sure your proportions are where they are. Know where your lights are and your darks are. You might want to draw them out with your pencil, like kind of cut out the shapes so you know where your extreme lights are and your extreme darks are. Because once you go over the whites with the charcoal, it's really hard to get them white again. Now, it's fine if that's going to be a mid-tone or something. You'll see I worked a lot with the eraser to create mid-tones, but to get them white again, kind of a pain. You can also use, which I didn't in this drawing, but you can use white chalk. This is compressed white charcoal or white chalk. So yeah, if you do end up needing to make something white again, you can always go that route. I used the gel pen because that's what I had when I was creating the drawing. I couldn't find my white chalk, so is what it is. So yeah, the first thing I did, I like to start with the face, specifically the eyes. So I outlined the eyes and I did the darks in the eyes first. I always like to mark out my darkest darks. So I started with the face, I did the darkest darks, the hairs on the head, move in the direction the hair is moving on your reference photo. It just makes it look nicer when everything looks more realistic, and the movement of the hair is going to be really important. So I marked in my darks because this was a calico cat. So there were blacks, there were oranges, there were whites. So I had a lot of tones to work with. Marked out my dark places on the face of the cat first, and then I took my stump blender to smooth them out. If you don't have a stump blender, I actually made this one out of newspaper, or I think actually this was like not newspaper, it may have been like calendar paper or something like that, like, you know, those big calendars that you write on. But I have a video on how to make these. It's really super simple, but it's my favorite stump blender I've ever had. So you can buy them or you can make one. So put the video for that down below. Use my stump blender to kind of draw with it, smooth out the darkest spots, and then use it to draw to make my midtones. Because I mean, this is a cat, and we're doing realistic, but we're doing a easygoing, learning how to charcoal drawing. So we want a nice quarantine experience, right? And yeah, I did most of my midtones, the finer detailed midtones with this, and also with the fine line eraser. And then whenever I moved to the body, again, first thing I did is I took my compressed charcoal and I blocked out my major dark spots, the major black stripes and patterns on the cat. And even ones that had a little bit of white mixed in them, I went through later with the fine line eraser and the big chunky rubber eraser to erase to get some of my midtones in there. That way I was able to do this quicker versus just drawing hair by hair with a charcoal pencil. But after you do your big chunks and your big shapes, you smooth them out with a tissue blender or with your fingers. You'll see that I kind of did both, or with your stump blender, you know, depending on the size of the space you're working on. You smooth it out to make it look, you know, just a little bit nicer than scrubby charcoal. And then you use your pencil, your charcoal pencil, to add details in there, add hairlines in there. And you don't have to go overkill with the hairlines. You can infer some here and there. You just want to give some texture to your cat, so it's not just one big flat black and white object. And you know, you just keep going and keep adding your detail. You want to pay very close attention to your reference photo, like depending on how realistic you want this to be, how accurate you want it to be. I mean, if you're doing like me and you're doing a calico cat, calicos look all different. So it's not like, oh, that's not really a calico, you know? Whereas if you're doing a tabby, tabbies have very particular markings, you know? You want to be more accurate there. But you follow the shapes and the patterns as closely as you can. Make sure you're allowing for whatever lights and shadows, highlights and shadows, even on your blacks, because that's going to alter whether or not they look black or gray or sometimes even closer to white. So pay close attention to the actual value of the color that's on your reference photo. What else? But yeah, on the larger areas of my piece, like the bed in the background, that's when I really started using the tissue blender, because I didn't want to focus too much on the bed in the background. It's just a bed, you know, it's just a cat bed. I was drawing a cat, but it was in a cat bed, so I mean, threw it in there. I just didn't want it to look like I drew a cat in a big white nothing, you know? So I kind of added some texture on the cat bed back there. I used mostly the tissue for blending and the stump blender to add some of the sheep looking detail on there. So say hi.
Hi. Hi, Lazy.
Okay. Anyway, you wanna sit on my lap?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I wear Jazzy's art box?
Yes, you can wear Jazz's Jazzy art box. Say bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, so yeah, I worked on the bed, the cat bed, because context and composition are important to your piece. It's important to make your piece look finished.
Bye. Hi. Bye.
And that's something I'm going to be working on during this quarantine, is making finished looking pieces.
Bye.
Versus just drawing things, if that makes sense. Shh, 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 shh. Gotta let mommy talk too, silly. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I hope it was beneficial to you. I hope it was at least a little bit entertaining for your quarantine experience. And what else should we say, Kayla?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead and leave a comment down below about what you thought about this tutorial, if there's any specific tutorial you would like to see in the future. And I do have a couple of things already recorded to edit out for you guys. I'm using a new editing software, so it's taking me a lot longer to figure out. And big news for you guys coming up. I'll see you next time. Thank you.
No, you have to go up.
Do I?
Yeah.